Hello, everyone. Today we are going to welcome Kata, a neuroscientist. We're going to learn about her journey, how her journey led her to explore neuroscience and become passionate about neuroscience and a perspective on education. Kata really inspired me that I decided to create a neuroscience pack. I hope everyone would enjoy this neuroscience pack. You can find it in the description. Many of you are subscribing, so thank you so much for supporting the channel. Let's continue, and I hope you really enjoy this podcast. See you in the podcast. Tell us about your early years and how your background shaped your interest in science and eventually neuroscience.
My journey started with water polo, and because of professional sport that I was playing, I was very interested in psychology, obviously. So this was one of the factors. And I finished my degree, as I mentioned, an Italian philology degree with teachers education. So somehow it got intertwined, these interests, So I read a lot about psychology eventually and about child development. When you do high professional level sport, I would say that you always wonder about what makes the difference between people and between individuals. So that was one of the drawing experience for me. And because I did sports, and it was kind of a natural way in Hungary to get into teaching. So I got into swim teaching very early as well. So very early on, I built an experience with children, I'm talking about like age 14, 15. So I think I always had a picture about how small children, especially because these are like ages 4 to 7, 8 that I mainly work with, how they work. And clearly my teacher degree and my psychology studies with children helped me to understand them better. So when I read about Piaget, when I read about other behaviorism and Watson, then I obviously I started to really getting the clue about how the mind works and how our behavior is shaped. So that was the first experiences in my path for sure. And then I just developed this interest in developmental psychology, let's say.
Thank you so much, Kata. So now you've lived in several places and had many experiences. How have your travel influenced your perspective on education or even your own personal development?
So while I was doing my Italian degrees, I went to Italy, for example, and I was a babysitter. So I had another look at other people's life and other cultures' education. And the most shaping experience or a complete change of how education is in Hungary and how in certain places compared to like well-developed countries like Denmark was when I went to do a teacher assistant internship during my studies. This we talk about like 20 years ago now or more. And I went to a small Danish village school in Stoubu, and that was a complete like eye-opening experience. So and it was a public school, so I came from a public school and with a public school background. The system was completely different, right? So what they think it's important, what's the role of the teacher, what's the aim of the education. And I think the Danish system is one of the best in terms in Europe, but obviously it's hard to rank it when you haven't seen it all. So the focus is not actually on factual knowledge, lexical knowledge, but how they could impact their lives or other people's lives. So critical thinking, I would say, it's one of the development. And this experience, how the children can choose also the way of tools, how they want to develop, how they want to demonstrate their knowledge, like project works. This was completely new for me. And a wild example is that they went to the forest for like they did like a 2-3 weeks project on forest life, but that means that they actually building like a tree house, or they build I think the topic was Vikings. So how they included them, and they were also multi-age groups. So there was no exclusion criteria of age, in these projects. Also in reading projects, they actually work together. So the bigger ones were teaching reading skills to the smaller ones, and vice versa, what you can learn from small ones actually. So this was a complete eye-opening experience.
Well, thank you so much. That sounds really interesting, that journey. And sometimes when we experience different way of operating or different way of doing things, it really helps us see the world in different ways. Okay. What was the defining moment or experience that made you realize neuroscience was your passion?
So neuroscience came way later, I have to say. As I said, psychology remained my interest. And then I did whole transfer, basically, to Ireland in my life. I moved to Ireland at some point. Unfortunately, education didn't work out for me here for several reasons, which I'm not going to detail now. But this eye-opening experience also made me realize that I can't definitely work in this system. And then I went to Ireland, where I tried to pick up a job as an Italian teacher, but I didn't manage. And I ended up in financial services. So here, what I learned from that experience, that you can learn anything you want, really, So this was my personal conclusion. If I can work in financial services, then I can do others. Stuff as well. So I never gave up the idea of psychology and to learn in depth about psychology. So eventually I signed up for a course. This had to be life circumstances as well that I was able to do it, but I really wanted to do. And the modules were different. Personality psychology, a bit of like abnormal psychology, it's like basically clinical psychology, biopsychology. And the most interesting for me was cognitive psychology. So all decision making, attention, memory, perception, all the illusions, visual illusions, or other type of memory learning. How children, for example, have memory which is malleable. It's very interesting studies on this, especially in legal circumstances. So this made me very interested. And as I'm always interested in the children's side, I'm stuck with development psychology interest, And so I finished the psychology, but then we did this move back to Hungary, when I'm originally from. So, and here when neuroscience came, and this is a research degree. And so at the first lesson, it was like introduction to cognitive psychology. It was all about debate in relation to cognitive science, like the most famous debate in all kind of cognitive psychology or neuroscience is the nature versus nurture debate. So, and I read so much interesting thoughts, very difficult pieces, and that was definite for me that I'm at the right place. So I think I like the theoretical debate as much as I like the actual experience-based, research-based neuroscience. So this is how I'm at the moment in this field, which is very competitive as well. So we know that neuroscience is not one of the most searched, most acknowledged field in the moment. And here we have to mention like other sciences that are obviously the biological sciences, natural sciences, and how this is, I think, is going to also will influence or already influencing the way how neuroscience is viewed in all kind of fields. Like, and let's stick with education. Like, there are now studies out there which are not just proving the brain and the brain areas, but also on molecular level, what kind of changes take place when you actually study something or learn something.
And this is fascinating, and I myself am very passionate about that topic. I'm hoping that the research in this field would really help. In fact, really help many different areas of our society, so that we can better implement the joy of living, hopefully.